Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation. Hi everyone! I recently had the incredible opportunity to give a presentation at the Hong Kong Chinese Martial Arts and Culture Conference on a subject that's really personal to me. It's the preservation of Chinese martial arts and its impact on society and educational empowerment. I know, that's a lot of words. After giving the presentation, I thought it would be interesting and hopefully insightful for listeners, so I thought I would share it on the podcast. I'd love to hear what you think, so please leave me some comments or suggestions. I've enjoyed recording this podcast, and I hope you've enjoyed listening. If you have, please rate my podcast on your platform of choice and share it with others. If you would like to go one step further and support with a donation, that really helps keep this podcast going and also supports the work I do. You can become a patron of the show by visiting my website or patreon.com/SifuMimiChan. For comments or suggestions, reach out on social media at SifuMimiChan. Now on with the show. Hi, everybody. I am back from traveling literally around the world. It's kind of bizarre being thousands and thousands of miles from your home, but it does give me a chance to catch up on projects. Just kidding. I had a really lovely time on my vacation with Oscar and some friends. We went to Australia and New Zealand, so lots and lots of fun. But I actually was thinking I would jump on the mic today and slowly recovering from some allergies. Surprise, surprise, right? Always having allergies. But I wanted to share a really cool project that I was a part of recently, and that is the Chinese Martial Arts and Culture Conference in Hong Kong that was held by the Education University of Hong Kong. And the reason I was able to be involved in that is my cousin Tim is a professor there and really wildly amazing academic, and reached out to me about writing an abstract. And I was like, what's an abstract? Google again, long time since I've been in school and whatnot. So I was like, oh, I can write an abstract on, traditional Chinese martial arts. Like, what are you thinking? And we kind of came up with, because the conference is very much centered around the contributions of Chinese martial arts, what it brings to society, and just kind of promoting the awareness and education of Chinese martial arts, like kind of worldwide. And I thought it would be great to do an abstract on the importance of traditional Chinese martial arts in educational empowerment and societal development. So that's like a lot of words. And when I thought of that, I was like, well, the work I do here, we kind of turn a lot of our Kung Fu, Tai Chi, martial arts training, teaching into advocacy and action. As somebody who has been here in Florida and has had a handful of reasons to get involved in advocacy, I feel like the reason behind my motivation is my martial arts training and background. The lessons that I've learned growing up has very, very much shaped who I am. The lifestyle that I lead is very much because of my martial arts. So I thought that would be a really cool take on it, but also how Chinese martial arts is education in itself, and how it can be a tool to better us humans, and how that is important for learning as well as societal development. So I looked up what an abstract was and was like, just several hundred words on kind of a summary of what the benefits of, or what this theme was about. And so I wrote a little abstract, and I felt all like academic, and I was like, sure, submit. And my cousin was like, yeah, you basically have to get accepted, and the conference has to just basically, kind of review all the different abstracts that are being submitted. There's a panel that kind of judge this. And then, of course, at the conference itself, it's very much like kind of a more formal academic conference, as you will, but I'm used to like Comic Con. So you submit a panel and will the audience enjoy these panels? How can it be entertaining? And so coming at this from an academic standpoint was a really great exercise for me. So shout out and thank you to my cousin Tim for pushing my brain to the limits. And I believe he contacted me maybe around Lunar New Year or something like that. Of course, I was very busy with the school and I thought, well, I think I can throw out some sort of, a few hundred words. That's not a problem. And so I submitted it and I kind of said it, forget it, and forgot about it. Then they wrote back and said, oh, we really loved your abstract. Looking forward to your participation in the conference, which was in April. I'm actually recording this on the day of the conference that I woke up at 3:30 in the morning for, because of course in Hong Kong, it's afternoon there, and presented at the, 4:10 time slot for Chinese Martial Arts and Culture Conference. And it was so really great to be accepted and that they thought, my paper was worthwhile in terms of what I wrote and what I presented. And I don't have it in front of me, but the quote was like, a very beautifully written abstract regarding the importance of Chinese martial arts in educational empowerment and societal development. We're looking forward to your full paper. And I was like, full paper? And so I emailed my cousin. I'm like, what does this mean? He goes, oh, well, now you need to submit the full paper from the what you talked about in your abstract, and you'll have a presentation. I'm like, presentation? No problem. I do those all the time. So presentation's a good 20-ish minutes with a 10-minute Q&A. I was like, that I can easily do on the abstract I wrote. I'm like, well, how long is a paper? And he's like, 6,000 words to 8,000 words. And I'm going, excuse me, what? I haven't written a quote unquote paper in like 20 plus years. My little blog posts online for my patrons, thank you guys again, that get to hear my ramblings, very much know that I am not a scholarly writer or author of any kind. And so having to write a 6,000 plus word research paper, basically proving what I'd written in my abstract and giving all of the evidence and all the information behind my findings and my thoughts was real kung fu. It was real hard work. It was a very challenging exercise for me because I have been away from academia for such a long time. For those that don't know, proud UCF Knight alumni over here, graduated from the University of Central Florida in 1999. So, before all the fancy parking garages that are there now and strip mall and really cool eating facilities and restaurants rather, and just places that was not there when I was there. We had a student union that had like a Subway in it, which was pretty fancy for the time. But now when I drive over there, there's all of these really cool restaurants, as well as I think there's like a spa. There's all these really cool things. So I digress, but I have not written a paper, let's just say, in a very, very long time. And so I was stressing out a bit because I was planning to go on this world tour trip. I was very busy with Lunar New Year. That obviously runs well into March for us. So I had not had time. And I thought, okay, I need to get this submitted before I leave on vacation, and I can easily work on the presentation while I'm gone. So I finished the research paper or the full paper and I submitted it, and I hadn't heard back, but I presumed everything was good and that it was fine. And thank you again to my cousin Tim, who definitely had some eyes on it and gave me some really great notes. But it was kind of fascinating to have to kind of go through this journey of figuring out how to formally put down all of my thoughts and my findings and the statistics that are one in my head, but also from my research that I did online and in talking to people and just thinking about the years of experience. It was a really, I don't want to use the word fun, but it was a really insightful exercise in where I stand in my writing. Lots to learn, lots of room for growth there, but also how to utilize that side of my brain again. It had been a really long time before I had to kind of turn a paper in on time, then work on a presentation, then have the presentation. So had a little bit of empathy for my college and high school kids. Not too much, because honestly, been there, done that. But also it gave me a little bit of that pressure and a little bit of that, oh my God, I'm under a deadline. And of course, when you make a plan to do things on vacation, it's a very, very bad idea, everybody. So learn from my mistake. I got very sick with my sinus allergies, as I should know. That happens to me every time I travel now. But I also did not have any real downtime on the trip. It was go, go, go. And the days that I did have, I was sleeping, literally just trying to recover and rest so that I could continue on my trip. But I thought it would be a really fun podcast for me to share all 6,000 plus words of my paper. Just kidding. I thought it would be cool, since I've already done the research and I have so many Chinese martial art enthusiasts. Thank you guys so much for always encouraging me and making comments, whether it's on Instagram or whether it's email, or those of you that are patrons, thank you so much for supporting me on this podcast and also empowering me to continue the work I do. All of my social justice advocacy and all of the free time I have is because I have patrons like you to support me, that continues helping get editors for this podcast, as well as social media teams that can help make posts and things like that. I don't have the capacity for it, and I can't do the work I'm doing unless that stuff's taken care of. So my patrons, those of you supporting me on this podcast, thank you so much. You know who you are. Maybe I'll do a quick shout out on the blog post and list all the names of my recent patrons. But if you are interested in being one of those supporters, I surely am not below groveling to ask you now to consider supporting me and continuing this work that I'm doing, allowing me to have a voice here on this podcast, but also in those posts that I'm doing. Anytime I put any content out, it is really because I have patrons that are supporting me. So you can do that on patreon.com/SifuMimiChan. A quick mid-podcast plug makes me feel like those cool YouTubers that are able to just really like seamlessly seg right into a advertisement. So that was not my intention. My intention was actually gratitude. So in any case, because I have so many martial arts enthusiasts that have been so kind to make comments that they enjoy when I share a little bit about what I've learned, I thought it would be a good idea to share some of the highlights of my research paper and my homework. I'm sharing my homework with you guys. So the title of the paper, of course, was The Importance of Traditional Chinese Martial Arts in Educational Empowerment and Societal Development. And basically, I highlight the preservation of cultural heritage, like why that's important. And so I start off with cultural preservation and what that is and why it's important. And I really feel the thing that I kind of highlighted out here is that I've been studying martial arts since I was 3 years old, or even before, under the direction of my father. And as the inheritor of the Wallum system and the person that is taking on the challenge of carrying and proliferating and bringing this art form forward and trying to keep it in its traditional style, I know what a challenge and how difficult that is. But I also consciously made that decision and want to make sure that our style is preserved across the globe. And because of that, I do know the importance of why this is essential. And it's because of the impact that I see on a daily basis. It's because of the impact I see that it has on our students, and then what that means carrying forward and what that means for society. And so cultural preservation is really important, because if we don't maintain these traditions and values and practices that define a lot of societies, then they are not passed on through generations and they're lost through time. And so where globalization often leads to a loss of traditional culture as we embrace modern technology, as we embrace modern ideas, I think that it's important that the integration of heritage preservation and education is even more pivotal as we nurture well-rounded, culturally aware individuals. Because when we learn traditional Chinese martial arts, it offers physical self-improvement, of course, but it also serves as an educational platform that fosters cross-cultural understanding, resilience, and encourages personal growth. And so during this paper, I kind of address those areas and how it encourages personal growth and resilience in humans. But in addition to the human side of things and involving personal growth, it also prevents cultural erosion due to globalization. And so without people like me and others that are preserving the art form and safeguarding these traditions, then a community's identity can gradually disappear. I wasn't watching this movie that Oscar was watching on the plane, but at the end I saw something about like 40 indigenous languages die per day or some very, very startling statistic. And while I understand that there are languages that can't be preserved and that things will get lost over time, I think it's a really, really, really sad thing. And when we were in Peru and we were with the indigenous people there and the languages that they spoke, and they explained that this wasn't written down, it was all done through storytelling. And so as those storytellers died off or the language doesn't get carried on and people who are born start speaking the native language of the rest of the cities and countries and maybe adapting to whatever was more modern or what was more global, then that language would have died off, right? And I apologize, I can't remember the name of the language and I don't want to botch it up. But basically when I thought about that and I think about the fact that languages can die off so easily if not preserved, then that's the same for us as traditional Chinese martial artists. And I see it every day. I see it in other schools that have decided to go kind of a different path. And no disrespect to them, they're taking what value they see and taking what they think is useful and able to be implemented in today's society. But I do think it's really important that we preserve the culture of traditional Chinese martial arts as I see it within the Wallam system. So I can only speak on behalf of Wallam and what I'm trying to preserve here. But I think it's really important that we don't see these communities or these cultures die off. And the reason for that is it actually does promote a framework for personal and community growth. And I'm going to address that more later. But really, to see societies thrive, technology and economy might be very important and what drives most of us today, but values and understanding are still the core of humans. And I guess till the Cylons come and take over, we are still human. And being connected to our historical and philosophical roots is very, very important to grounding us and to ensuring that progress doesn't come at the cost of our identity and the wisdom of humans and the humans that have come before us. So I feel like there is a balance between allowing us to evolve, but with purpose and with depth and with the knowledge of the ancestors of our past. So when I started to kind of write this out, one of the first things I had to prove or talk about was, first of all, what is cultural preservation? Why is that important? What does that mean for society? And it really got me thinking of just this last decade and how tumultuous things are and how we are so politically polarized and what are the things that I've often fought for? And of course, AAPI history being one of the top things that comes to mind of what was the solution to anti-Asian hate crimes and violence? And when I did the research, education was there. And in a sense, Chinese martial art is part of that history, is my father's journey. He is a part of this history and kind of understanding how that's interconnected between my Chinese martial arts, but also education in school and how it doesn't have to be if and or it can all kind of be together, right? It doesn't have to be a sum zero thing. It has to be where we look at things and say, like, what are the benefits and how can we benefit from everything working together? So in traditional Chinese martial arts, stories are passed down that are often of resilience, honor, and respect, adaptability, and survival. And so we take those lessons and we're able to ingrain them in our training, in our philosophy, and hopefully those characteristics also carry over, right? And so when I think about the challenge of preserving the tradition, it's like an uphill battle. There's so much distraction. There are so many reasons why Chinese martial arts should or could not, may not survive. But in my lifetime, I know the steps that I'm going to take in order to kind of carry that forward. And so at my presentation, I shared a little bit about Wa Lam, our history, our philosophy. I kind of shared who I am, which I'm not going to do here on this podcast because hopefully you guys all know. But one of the things that I really wanted to emphasize was the core philosophy and teachings, which I've done so many times on this podcast, in Kung Fu Pods, on YouTube, on so many different things. But I think it's really essential to kind of sit with a little bit and understand, like, at the core of traditional Chinese martial arts isn't just the kicking and punching. It's the philosophy. It's the martial arts altar that the Wa Lam Temple has, very specific to the Wa Lam system, right? The respect our ancestors, respect our grandmaster, respect our teachers, respect what we're learning, the kindness and fellowship and hard work, our fire sign turned upside down, specific to the Shaojiang village and Wa Lam. It's that control of ourselves, becoming better people, our pledge to become better humans, and turning that fire upside down and having patience and control over ourselves, right? And so instilling all of that, reminding people when we bow, it is because we are respecting one another. It is a gesture of respect, but it is a gesture that is symbolic of connecting us from our future self, our present self, to our past. Like there's this very specific feeling when you wave and say hello compared to when you bow to say hello, right? There's a lot more attached with that. And so for students to learn this, they're learning like a physical movement, but beyond that, that one movement comes with so much context, so much history, and so much more depth than just a simple greeting. And so if we can teach our students the importance of that, what is entailed, those things do carry over into their everyday lives. When they greet someone or when they decide to carry themselves in the world, they do so more respectfully because they are used to having that decorum, but also having just that moment of thought of like, what does this mean to greet an elder or an elderly person? What does this mean to greet my peers or your Kung Fu brothers and sisters, as we say in the classroom? And then when we translate that to the outside world, it's like, no, all of these are my fellow humans. So I should treat them also with respect and kindness. So when we encourage that philosophy in the school and when we encourage that behavior in the school, our hope is that these humans go outside of the school and apply that to those around them, right? And so we take what we consider our teachings, our values, our core values and philosophy, and then we hope that our students then are able to replicate that when they leave the walls, especially again, when we are in a society right now where one single word or topic or controversy or current event will ignite fires and arguments and dissonance. And I think that it's a really unique thing where we exist in the Wa Lam Temple. We can have really this harmonious place because of the respect we have for one another and the training hall, the temple, or the Kung Fu school, wherever we have Wa Lam practitioners. I find that that is universal across Wa Lam schools. And then what I've seen is these students go out into the world and they are able to then foster that deeper empathy and understanding with other people. And that's to me like really essential. And I think it was one of the things that when I was writing this paper, I was excited about because it reinforced what I already knew, what I talk about all the time. But basically, I kind of did the research through it. I also looked at our student body and kind of looked at the evidence behind, wow, this is significant. You know, education is a vehicle for the expansion of knowledge, culture, martial arts, etc. And when we apply the principles that we are applying in martial arts training to, hey, this is good for education, this is good for society, and kind of see it in several dimensions like this, I think it really is impacting in a way that is measurable, and also that we can see kind of exponentially. So my hope is that when we're doing this, we're teaching this younger generation. And so when I broke down the paper, I talked about the benefit of martial arts, traditional Chinese martial arts, especially, as a tool for learning all of these different disciplines and thought processes and ways of carrying oneself, and beyond that, how it affects each age range or human, essentially, right? And so we've got, for simplicity, I broke it down into like kids, teens, and adults. And that's really simplistic because there's so many different variances in there. But what we've seen is, the correlation I drew for our younger students, like kids, is, in an era where texting, online platforms, or social media, but basically communication skills are changed. I think I used the word deteriorating in my presentation, but I think the word is changed because they seem to be able to communicate with one another. I don't know that I've been able to measure the effectiveness, because when I'm having one-to-one conversations with a 5-year-old at the school or a 10-year-old and I ask a question, I see this immediate fear, panic, and hesitation to answer, because a lot of times they're afraid of answering wrong. But I see it even more in the teenage group than I do in the youth group. So in the youth group, it's like this is a really great age range to catch students and humans so that we can make sure they're uninhibited to use their words, to be able to think on their own and not be afraid to answer incorrectly. So I think that when we train children in Chinese martial arts, they are learning these critical communication skills that then builds confidence. And the confidence piece is, I think, what's so important that parents and teachers and seniors like to see in students, is because we see such a lack of confidence. We see kids being bullied. We see them being cyberbullied. We see so many facets of how children can be kind of preyed upon. And when they have confidence, they are less likely to be a victim. That's just a fact, right? If they are more confident, they present themselves in a certain manner, they are less likely to be the kid that gets picked on or the kid that just makes themselves feel alienated, right? And so building confidence is really, really key, and seeing children that can communicate more clearly, they feel more confident in being effective communicators and being heard and knowing that they can be heard and feeling like adults or their peers or their, not fully, teacher-like, but assistant instructors, their teenage instructors care about what they have to say. And I think empowering kids to be able to understand that what they say is being heard is a huge thing. In addition, of course, the usual martial arts spiel, you learn respect and discipline and hard work, and all of those things are absolutely, of course, important. But I really think the communication piece is something that's really missing from our youth, and the effectiveness of speaking out loud and being able to practice with focus. Those skills are so valuable. And so then that leads me to my teenage group, where I just talked about them being mentors to other students. And so hopefully we've had them as kids training, but as they move up into their teen years, we often put them into leadership roles. And so to give youth, like teenage kids, leadership roles is key, because they become better mentors to younger students, but it, of course, enhances their communication skills as well, but also gives them that confidence, a different layer of confidence to guide others with patience and lead by example and become better adults later on in life. But basically supporting others with purpose gives them purpose. And there was a recent study, I will try to link that here, showing that teenage range from like 12 to 15 just being really important formative years where kids are developing, where their relationship with their mentors, teachers, and peers are so important. And because of that middle school age range, they feel more alienated, they feel less connected, they feel less of a sense of belonging. And so to have a community, a sense of community already at this age where they have peers they can interact with in a positive way, and then they have kids they themselves are mentoring is really, really incredible. And I've seen this. We have a junior team that work with the younger kids, and to see them transform, to see them take pride in the students that they're teaching is absolutely inspiring. And so to have kids that can build the resilience they need to have growth mindset, it shapes them into wonderful young adults that then are more equipped to face the complexities of today's society, right? And that leads us to kind of bringing us into the adults. Like, how do adults benefit? Well, there's the obvious. We're working out, we have physicality, but the benefits are everything I just listed for kids and for teens. But really, I think in today's society, what I'm seeing the most is the bond of community, building that fellowship, cultural appreciation, hard work ethic, just building those strong connections to those around them, and then to a tradition. So what I kind of talked about earlier with the gesture of bowing, and how the difference between even a handshake or a wave or a nod, hello, the gesture of bowing has so much ingrained in just that one movement. There's so much happening in the brain of, why am I doing this? What does this mean? Who is this person's relationship to me? It entails so much. And so those things are all layered into the training. And that again improves leadership skills, corporate or workplace. It includes the ability for our students, just like in the team group, to build their confidence, makes them better leaders, which we have better leaders out there in society, they'll be better teams. And so just kind of carrying all of those same traditions over into their everyday life, we've seen where we have students that can interact with one another on different levels. So normally we have maybe a teenager that would never be kind of having these type of conversations with adults, or connecting in a way with somebody who is 20 years their senior that works in the corporate world. And we have a soccer player kid that also does Kung Fu, and they would normally not really have this connectivity, but because of traditional Chinese martial arts, they have something in common. And in the same way, a 5-year-old may not have something in common with a 16-year-old, we have something that really connects them and that grounds them and brings them into that sense of community. I was asked at the conference how we're able to keep our students engaged. How do we keep people wanting to do traditional Chinese Kung Fu and Tai Chi? Because it's difficult. It's hot in Florida. We have this open air environment, i.e. no AC, right? And how do we keep our students? And I said, honestly, our students tell us the reason they're there. High percentage is because of the relationships they build, is because of the friendships and the bonds and the mentorship they feel with their instructors, and the relationship of having Kung Fu family. It's really unique. And through COVID, we were told this was almost life-saving. I hate to make it so sound grandiose or anything, but honestly, we were so isolated when we were able to still train together virtually, and we were able to train 2 to 3 parking spaces apart, but still see other humans during a time where we were on lockdown and we didn't have connectivity in the workplace or at school. Our community was still able to come together through COVID and train together and work together with a purpose, and then feel good at the end of that. So I've seen the results. I've seen how important having Chinese martial arts is in societal development. And I'm really excited that I was able to, again, write this paper and kind of, connect the dots in a sense. So one of the final kind of things I'll talk about here is how martial arts exposes students to different cultures, philosophies, and traditions, which means they also then have a deeper respect for cultural diversity, and being rooted in something like Walam and having, not just Kung Fu and Tai Chi techniques, but a way of life that then strengthens our community. And then that then makes change makers. So we talk about the work I'm doing with social justice or advocacy. I don't do this alone. I have a team that allowed me for 2.5 to 3 years of my life to take a lot of my time away from them, teaching them, to put into volunteering and going to Tallahassee and fighting for Asian American history, and for going to workshops and educating people on why it's important that we stay connected and build bridges between different communities and different organizations. Like, I took time away from Walam to be able to get that work done. And the reason is my community, my Walam family, believed in the work, and they themselves were advocates because of that, because of their allowance, but because of their support of having me go out and do that on their behalf, right? And so it's just really remarkable to see something where my father started teaching in the United States on the East Coast. He was one of the first to teach non-Asians. He was the first to kind of open the doors in the Boston Chinatown area and say, no, I want everyone to learn. And so by opening the doors and showing kind of the world that diversity is important, that he wants everybody to be able to have the knowledge, right? Is that the traditional Kung Fu and Tai Chi was really important, and that this could be good for others, but it ingrained in him, in his students and those after him and into me. What does that mean for my generation? What does that mean for modern times? And to me, it just fostering that cross-cultural understanding and respect goes beyond the classroom. It goes beyond just the Kung Fu and Tai Chi physical lessons and movements. It's the Kung Fu altar, right? The martial arts altar. It's all of the philosophy that I've talked about. It's bringing these principles into their homes, schools, workplaces, and social circles. It's fostering more empathy and allowing students to interact with others in a thoughtful and considerate manner. It's allowing and bringing out a sense of belonging and camaraderie, strengthening social connections beyond the martial arts community. So we see this kind of trickle down effect of all this positivity. And again, I would not be a change maker. I would not have gotten so much advocacy done had my community not supported me, had my Walam instructors said, you go do your thing. We've got classes. We'll run them. We'll do all the stuff, right? It's so it is proven to me that there is societal impact from Chinese martial arts education, because the students that have been training with me understood and understand why it was so important that I got the work done that I did, why it's so important that we have education in our school systems of Asian American history, because it does actually prevent violence rooted in racism. They were able to draw those lines and back me up on it, right? And so I think it's incredible to see kind of that evidence-based conclusion of why Chinese martial arts can make change makers and make society better, in addition to the physicality. So in my paper, I also, of course, addressed some of the physical and mental cognitive positives that come out of training. So I'm not going to get into that as much here, because I think a lot of us already know, like, yes, Kung Fu and Tai Chi is really good for stress reduction. Kung Fu and Tai Chi is really good for blood pressure and diabetes. And there's all these other chronic diseases that are able to be benefited from the study of martial arts. And, I've talked, I think before, a little bit about instant recall. We teach in different languages. There's like neurological benefits. There's a really great Kung Fu pod with Sifu Pita from Switzerland, who's a psychologist, on using the right and left side of the brain and how there's coordination because we do cross-body movements, that we have to use both sides of the brain. So there's obviously so much. And mental health, just having that wellness, having that rooting, all of the things that we do in our martial art training, of course, is super, super beneficial to our physical cognitive selves. But I really wanted to give you guys kind of that overview of this 6,000 plus word research paper about how I found and drew these conclusions to martial arts, Chinese martial arts, and why it's so important that we preserve it, and why it's so important that we continue to teach it generation after generation after generation. And the challenges are how I'm going to ensure after I'm gone, other generations will feel as motivated to keep this going. And that is my job as a teacher and educator, is to share how important this is and why, and share the reasons why and the evidence of why, and why we need this so much. So, creating those compassionate leaders and responsible humans in society so that they can go out and be better in the world and create more harmony, I think is a good enough reason. But I want to emphasize that this is not easy. This is a daily challenge, that we are in competition with everything out there, all of the TikToks and the social media and everything that's fighting for the attention of those that could show up to class, but maybe got caught up doing XYZ. Not that whatever other people doing isn't worth value or time, but the preservation and the practice of Chinese martial arts is so essential and important. And when it is done well, and when students are dedicated enough to gain all of the benefits, it's immeasurable. And I'm really excited to see that, as somebody who has dedicated their entire life to preserving these traditions, I want to ensure future generations inherit more than just physical skills, that they gain the wisdom, the value, and deep appreciation for cultural richness. And hopefully this strengthens individuals so that they can contribute to a more compassionate and respectful and culturally aware society. And in a nutshell, that is my 6,000 words, but I'm really proud that Walam Pai, the Walam system, has been a leader in this, has been a system that has really pledged to continue the art form in its traditional manner, from its teachings to the philosophy, to the forms and the weapons, to every single facet of it. Like, I am so proud of all of the instructors that have decided to open a school and dedicate such a huge portion of their life to making this happen. We need more of that. The challenges that I listed is, how do we make lasting impact? We need more awareness. We need more people who want to teach. We need more people who want to learn. We need more people to be aware that this is out there and that there are so many benefits. How do we do that? By doing Kung Fu, which is just a lot of hard work. But there are ways, right? We can use social media and digital platforms for good. We can use all of these educational workshops and opportunities to be out in the community. But it takes time, it takes energy, it takes resources. And so everyone can benefit. We've kind of drawn the conclusion that so many people can benefit. But I feel like if each one of us takes some time to dedicate and say, yes, this is something we're going to do. So if you're out there and you haven't started traditional Chinese martial arts yet, I urge you to, because you're not just doing something physical and you're not just doing something for your health. You are benefit alone, but you're also doing something great for the world. And I truly, truly believe that, after taking all this time to do this research and put it together in a kind of complete paper package and presentation, I really believe that the work and the efforts that we are doing at Walam isn't just good for the individual, isn't just good for Kung Fu and Tai Chi and movement, but I really believe what we're doing is good for the world. And I think that we need a bit more of that in this day and age. It has been a very, very trying, difficult, and tumultuous time for so many of you out there. And I know the answer may not seem like traditional Chinese martial arts is it, but I hope that if you do have that in your life, you can find some harmony, you can find some balance and some grounding, and know that there are other people out there doing the same thing. That alone hopefully will make you feel a little more connected and less alone. So I hope that this didn't sound like a huge 6,000 word ramble. But I did want to share my excitement for participating in the the Chinese Martial Arts and Culture Conference in Hong Kong. It was so cool to be a part of something all the way around the world. Yay for Zoom and the ability to be able to connect. But it allowed me to take a moment to really think about not just the work I do, but like what I've decided to do with my life and to say, hey, is this really valid? So I'd love your thoughts. I'd love to know if you have questions on anything that I mentioned, and let me know if any of that resonated with you. And if you've seen any benefits, or if you see more things that I haven't mentioned regarding the impact on educational empowerment and societal development, and let me know. Let me know what your thoughts are. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, having this outlet has been so meaningful to me in many ways. I learn so much every time I record an episode, mostly from my guests, but even when I sit here and ramble on, I also learn to be a better speaker, but mainly I've become a better listener and a better learner. So thank you guys for supporting the podcast. For those of you that are looking on the YouTube channel, thank you so much for watching me just, flail my hands a little bit and seeing, my little office here of all my comic art and loves. But it's been a real honor to be doing this since 2017, almost every week. I did say this year I was going to slow down a bit, so I appreciate the patience with the schedule. I hope that you continue to tune in, listen, and if you found this of value, please share it. And if you really loved it, become a patron, because that's what keeps this going. So thank you all so much. Hope you have a great day. That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to The Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram or Facebook.